Good morning. I tried to do Facebook Live, it just isn't happening right now, so here I am bringing you a video, getting the hell out of my comfort zone, and I'm going to read to you today from Agnotology in Vaccines by my good self. I'm setting myself a 30-day challenge to, well, it was going to be to go live every day, but now it's, well, if I can figure that out, well and good, but in the meantime I will be doing a 30-day challenge for myself of making a video for you every day for 30 days. This is to get me out of my comfort zone, you know. So, videos aren't fun. Not yet, but I'm sure they will be. Okay, I'm going to read from the Agnotology book, and then afterwards I'm going to give you a link to be able to join my email group to find out when the next book is published. My next book is called Cracks in Consensus, Doctors versus Vaccines. There's only 250 doctors in there so far. Let's read, shall we? Chapter 1. What is agnotology? It is the study of culturally induced ignorance by the publication of inaccurate or misleading scientific data. How can scientific data possibly be misleading or inaccurate? Let's first examine exactly how this particular form of ignorance occurs. The approximate flow of scientific research goes like this: research papers to government advisory committees, to politicians, to legislation, to doctors and nurses, to media propaganda, to the public. Whereupon the doctors, nurses and members of the public start parroting this information to others like it's fact, and we should be able to trust this information, but that's proved to be a dangerous route to follow. For some weird reason, ego, once an opinion is made in the medical industry, rarely does it get unmade. And yet there are still some people that will say to you, the science is settled. What? How can that ever be true when science is the discovery of what we didn't know before? Much has already been written about the phenomenon of our brains striving to keep a sense of consistency between what we think we know and new evidence in front of our faces that contradicts our current knowledge. Our collective cognitive dissonance is killing our children. A most serious case of agnotology currently exists here in Australia and in many other countries, where often the so-called science being relied upon used a placebo that is nearly an entire other vaccine, not an inert placebo substance which is an industry standard. We would all like to think that scientific researchers have the best interests of patients and their health outcomes as their primary motivation. However, they too are human and subject to the human condition of having to meet all their needs like food, water and shelter in this system that values money over everything else. How else do we account for young, fresh-faced individuals at the start of their medical learning ending up stooging for the government and pharmaceutical companies? They spend 4 to 6 years in study, racking up education debt and just scraping by, all the while having their impressionable minds filled by the well-orchestrated system of representatives of the petrochemical medical system. Thanks to the greed of one John D. Rockefeller, who knew a great opportunity when he saw one, we now have a mainstream medical system based on allopathy, pills, cutting and burning. Gone are the days prior to the Flexner report that suggested to the American Congress in 1910 that all the natural healing modalities which had existed for thousands of years were unscientific quackery. This report also called for the standardization of medical education, where only the allopathic-based AMA should be allowed to grant medical school licenses in the US. Incredibly, Congress enacted those recommendations in law. Allopathy became standard mainstream medicine, even though the 3 main methods of treatment at that time had been bloodletting, surgery, and the injection of toxic heavy metals like lead and mercury. From 1913 onwards, the large private foundations of Rockefeller and Carnegie use their tax-exempt statuses to heavily fund major educational institutions on the proviso that they would only teach allopathic medicine. The last nail in the coffin of medical freedom was placed with the additional proviso attached to granting funds of allowing some of their people to sit on the educational boards of these institutions. This meant that the entire sphere of medicine was completely under the control of a very small group of businessmen. Not much has changed in medicine since then, and we have been getting sicker and sicker as a species. Now, when a young person goes to university to become a doctor, the only education they are receiving is that of allopathic medicine. There is virtually zero information given to these up-and-coming doctors about nutrition or the healing power of plants. Healing people with plants doesn't make anyone $1, and we can't have that now, can we? Good grief, the greed for money has landed us in a most horrific place. Are you beginning to see how large this deception is yet? The medical schools are set up and funded by allopathy. The doctors come out of school thinking that allopathy is all there is. Plants as healers have been culturally demonized in favor of petrochemical-based drugs. Who exactly has this helped? And why are we sicker than we've ever been if allopathic medicine is so great? The human body has its own process to immunity from many diseases. There are a few ways of getting natural immunity to many diseases that do not involve injecting you or your children with these chemical cocktails. These are covered in the Solutions chapter. In addition, naturally occurring immunity usually means lifelong immunity, while injecting chemical compounds only gives at best a few years immunity. They will tell you that adverse and sometimes fatal reactions to vaccines are okay because you are protecting the rest of the community. I don't know about you, but I for one think that idea stinks. Why should anyone sacrifice their child for another child? That sounds barbaric, stupid and foolhardy, because it is. Parental concerns about an overload effect of multiple childhood vaccinations on the immune system have not been supported by scientific evidence because those studies have not been done. That's right, not even one study has ever been done on even 2 vaccines given at the same time, nor comparing non-vaccinated people with vaccinated people. The vaccine industry tells us that a study that included withholding vaccines to obtain the non-vaccinated test subjects would be unethical. I wish they realised that poisoning the entire human genome was unethical. And thus endeth Chapter 1. If you want to be kept up to date on my next book, Practicing Consensus, Doctors versus Vaccines, then you need to get on over and join my email group at, I'm going to spell it for you, bit.ly/CRACKSONSENSUS. And I do hope you join us. See you tomorrow. And most definitely, thank you for watching.